Good housing can be hard to come by.
Starter homes are disappearing from the United States.
Our housing system is broken.
That is alarming.
If people can't afford a home, then house prices can't go up
Local landlords
anymore.
are increasingly being replaced by big corporations.
Can Silicon Valley save the housing crisis?
Picture this. You sign a lease for a new rental. It's modest, single story, decent price, decent neighborhood, your standard single family starter home. Everything, and I mean everything, is handled through an app, which is a bit new and impersonal maybe, but in itself isn't that strange. It's 2025 after all, and we hail rides, order meals, buy tickets, refill prescriptions, and even restock our pantries, all through a few taps on our phones, without ever really connecting with a person. It's move-in day. You walk in and notice the lights are flickering. Turns out the fridge is broken too. You're annoyed, but you're not panicked. You do exactly what you were told to do. Report the problems through the app. Easy enough. Someone will take care of it. But it's taking a while for someone to get back to you. You wait and wait and wait and nothing. There's no number to call, just the app. More things start breaking. Still nothing. Now this is getting stressful. That's what happened to Jasmine Murphy and Curtis West. In June 2021, they moved into a modest house managed by Darwin Homes. Here's what West told investigative reporter Shelby King.
The water heater was completely gone. Not there. There was no stove in the house. The refrigerator wasn't working. It took 3 weeks to get a working stove in the house. It took 2 weeks to get a refrigerator.
By the time the reporter interviewed the couple, they had been living under these conditions for more than 3 months. West says he spent hours tracking down phone numbers, making calls, and otherwise chasing Darwin employees and contractors for help. Whenever they would finally hear back from someone, it would just trigger a carousel of third-party contractors, some unresponsive, some arriving without warning, others leaving jobs half-finished or even worse off. But this wasn't an isolated incident. I found a nearly identical story on Reddit, also Darwin Homes.
I didn't want to have to do this, but they really left me with no choice. Buckle up, because this is going to be a bumpy ride.
And then another.
The communication with this company is non-existent. When you call the help desk, it is a third-party company who cannot even reach your property manager by the phone, but simply only send them an email.
And another.
I am writing to formally complain again about the extremely unsafe and hazardous living conditions that I've been forced to endure for the past 17 days. The lack of running water has made it impossible to maintain basic hygiene and sanitation, having to use bags for bowel movements, unable to wash dishes, and manually removing waste from toilets due to the inability to flush them is beyond unacceptable. This situation has left me without the means to cook, shower, or even have company over. Despite paying almost $2,000 a month in rent and never being late, I've been met with silence and empty assurances that my problems are being handled.
Each one was worse than the last. I mean, just listen to this.
I started on January 6th when my toilet clogged and backed up into the master bedroom and all the way to the hallway. And after a month of water backing up and flooding like this, the sewer issue finally got fixed, but way in mid-April. You'd think it would be over, but no, it gets worse. On Memorial Day weekend, my kitchen water line busted, it flooded the kitchen, and I discovered mold spreading throughout. Darwin Homes refused to fix it right away because of the mold, so I had no functioning kitchen sink for over a week. The mold got so bad, they had to rip out my kitchen cabinets and floors in both the kitchen and the sunroom. It was a mess. Fast forward to September, I have a kitchen sink, no cabinets, no flooring, and to top it off, I stepped on a rusty nail that was left behind from those ripped out cabinets. And the insurance, they denied all my claims, even though my home, my personal belongings, everything was damaged by all this water and mold. I've been dealing with this for 9 months, and Darwin Homes has been dragging their feet at every turn. I'm so frustrated. I don't know when or where it's ever going to get fixed. Has anyone else had a similar experience, and just how do you handle it?
Eventually, I found a Facebook group with nearly 700 members sharing their experiences with Darwin homes. Mold, collapsed ceilings, infestations, broken HVAC-soaked drywall. The homes were falling apart. But equally central to everyone's complaints was the broken promise of the app. It was supposed to streamline everything, make it easy to get in touch, give you a paper trail. But instead, it was this black hole and you had no alternatives, no number to call, no point person, and therefore no sense of accountability. After reading horror story after horror story, it was time to visit Darwin's website. First impressions. You're greeted by sleek design and this mission statement, read here by my colleague Evan, whose voice is like perfect for this.
We made renting easy with our tech-driven, mobile-equipped application that provides trusted 24/7 support. You'll be home in no time.
As you scroll down, you pass a curated handful of 5-star reviews, identified by first name only, alongside what appears to be a mock-up of an in-app exchange. We need to fix the kitchen before the residents move in. And instantly, you receive a reply from a polished headshot saying,
We're on it. A field ops team member will be doing an inspection Monday at 8 a.m.
Below that, the website declares
24/7 digital support, no more texts or phone tag. Use our convenient app to submit all requests and always get a response.
Next to which, there's a checklist of maintenance items, ostensibly a look into how the app logs your requests.
Fast, effective repair. Every leaky sink and every broken AC will be fixed on your time, thanks to our easy scheduling and extended vendor network.
Hear me out. Compared to the shady property management companies with half-broken websites I've dealt with, this at least looks legit.
We moved in without ever speaking to a person. How does that happen, you ask? It's a long story. But the short version is, we were desperate to find housing. And this came through, and I thought, at some point I'll speak to a real person.
That's how one person on Facebook began their story.
The communication through email and texting seemed legitimate, and the door code and locking technology also seemed pretty modern, so it didn't really give off sketchy vibes.
Sure enough, a few paragraphs later, things spiral. They begin describing nightmare fuel, completely botched plumbing, crumbling fixtures, and a total inability to get a human being on the phone to help sort it all out. They ultimately sum it up as a slumlord tech-driven company. Except this person wasn't even describing Darwin Homes. They brought up another name, American Avenue, which led to another name, SFR3. All sorts of names were being tossed around in this group, but the stories always followed the same script. You find a single-family home, and you sign up for what's supposed to be a seamless, app-driven experience. Almost immediately, something goes terribly wrong. You report it, nothing gets fixed, the issues start to pile up. Oh, and meanwhile, this part I haven't mentioned yet, you're getting hit with random surcharges.
Darwin Homes in Georgia just randomly tacked on $150 in rent 8 days after I auto-paid rent on the 1st and said I have a balance due. What the heck?
In addition, I was charged over $200 for the door fixture that was noted damaged upon moving in. Darwin Homes have given me the runaround in regard to these charges. The safety of my family is a major concern, and Darwin Homes appears not to take accountability for the rental properties. Darwin Homes have been bullying, harassing, and potentially scamming me into paying extra charges for structural issues at this residence.
It has now been 48 days and counting, and I still have not received my security deposit refund. I've emailed and called numerous times just to be told that they're working on it, and that they would email me with an update, but never do.
After moving out of my home managed by Darwin Homes on May 5th, 2025, they are attempting to charge me $1,630 in fees.
There are like a dozen screenshots in here showcasing unexpected charges approaching thousands of dollars. And it's not just about the money, it's the way that it happens. No warning, no explanation, no way to reach a real person to come to an understanding or to dispute it. Just a fee that appears in your account that you're expected to pay very soon. These surcharges were the tipping point for many people in this group. It's what brought them here, not only to vent and to seek advice, but to mobilize a class action lawsuit and get their money back. Because what are you going to do? Pay? But if you don't, you face eviction and possibly other legal trouble.
SFR3 and Darwin Homes have been practically stealing money from its tenants while allowing them to live in unfit and toxic living conditions. I am hoping if we get enough complaints and examples, we can possibly get a class action suit against them or bring it to news stations. I know they lease houses all over the US, so I know we won't all be in the same area, but something needs to be done.
That's how one member put it. I'm still curious about these new characters in my research. So I look up SFR3 and immediately stumble upon the story of Charles Wilson, a veteran trying to settle into a new home in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Well, Wilson served in the Air Force as a veteran, and he told me today he doesn't feel safe in his own home.
I actually felt safer in Bagram and Kandahar than I do in my own home now in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Wilson says it started as soon as he moved into an SFR3 rental house in Little Rock with a dryer connection issue. Then he says more issues followed.
I only was worried about being able to use my dryer. I didn't realize it was going to actually be that bad.
The problems, he says, are piling up.
They have still not come to fix my home. More things are going wrong now.
On June 22nd, as the heat of the summer settled in, Wilson says his air conditioning went out. 20 days later, he says it's still not working.
They have not repaired it. They have not offered me a hotel voucher. And now my roof is leaking from the last rainstorm, and they won't acknowledge that my roof needs to be fixed.
Wilson says there is no maintenance number to contact SFR3. So, how does he report these issues?
There is an app where you can submit maintenance requests through email. Even in the lease, it says that the only way to contact them is through their email address.
I learned that in Rochester, New York, firefighters were called to an SFR3 home twice in 1 month. It's apparently one of 200 SFR3 homes in the city. And according to city records, this single residence has 12 violations on file.
The company is called SFR3 and is based in California. According to the company's website, it's a tech-enabled real estate fund which acquires and renovates single-family homes in disrepair for rent. City records show SFR3 bought more than 200 homes over the last 2 years in Rochester. Rochester city officials noted several problems with some of those properties, and now their challenge is what to do next. On Monday, April 10th, in the overnight hours, firefighters were called to a home at 26 Burbank Street. It was the second time the home caught fire in less than a month, and the city's arson task force ruled it arson later that morning. The building is owned by an LLC called SFR3-60. Rochester City Housing Attorney Mike Filano says he cannot reach anyone with the company.
We have the long-term concern of companies coming in, engaging in de-investment and leaving the city with the husk of a property. But we have the short-term problem of these, when there's an immediate issue, when there's an emergency, that we have nobody to contact, that the occupants have nobody to contact, the neighbors don't have anybody to contact whenever something goes wrong with these properties. There's no accountability. Now, our concern, at least with this property, why it's on our radar, is, a lot of them have double-digit violations. So 41 of these properties have double-digit violations, 17 have more than 20 violations, 25 of these are vacant. 115 of them have open cases with us, which means that there's at least one violation or no certificate of occupancy that we're aware of.
Filano tells me there is no cap for the number of properties an individual, group, or otherwise can own. If you're responsible, you can own as much as you'd like. The current city code states for each code violation on a property, it's a $500 penalty per violation per day. Again, I have not yet heard any response from SFR3.
A search for American Avenue, one of the other names, produced 11 pages of complaints on the Better Business Bureau website. And I cannot stress enough how predictable these stories are at this point. It's really as if people were living out the same movie across different homes. And it made me realize that this wasn't a story about one or two companies duping people desperate for shelter with sleek packaging. This was beginning to look more like a shared playbook, a blueprint even. And the label slumlord felt insufficient. The tenant complaints were serious, and from their perspective, yeah, these were slumlords. But the uniformity of the failures raised a different kind of question. I wanted to understand how and why things were breaking down in this predictable way. Was it just incompetence? Was this mismanagement? Or were these companies operating according to a set of incentives that made dysfunction not just common, but inevitable? Actually, before we answer those, this is as good a time as any for me to introduce myself. Hi, I'm Asha. I'm a staff writer and podcast host here at Strong Towns. Let me give you the 101 on Strong Towns. We look at how our cities are built and why so many are struggling. Crumbling roads, housing that's out of reach, budgets that don't balance. We're here to ask, is there a better way? So that's Strong Towns. As for this podcast, this is episode 1 of a series about the mechanics of American housing today. How our systems keep generating instability even when everyone involved wants something better. We all want affordable, safe, livable neighborhoods, so why does it seem like our systems keep producing the opposite? If you've ever asked yourself, whatever happened to the starter home? Or how are these landlords allowed to keep doing this? This series is for you. We're tracing the policies, the platforms, and the players who helped shape the mess we're in, and asking what it would take to build something better. So let's get back to it. In order to unpack what's happening here, we should first get an understanding of where Darwin, SFR3, and American Avenue even came from. This might get a little confusing, but stay with me. Before co-founding Darwin in 2018, Ryan Broderick and Zach Kinlock were part of the founding team at DoorDash, you know, the food ordering app? Zach was likewise the head of growth at Facebook, and now the pair is trying to, and I quote, build the Amazon of property management.
So we have Facebook, we have DoorDash, and then two guys that are on this hyper-growth, hyper-scale world that y'all live in. You decide to get into one of the most archaic industries in the world that has not had any, the words scale and hyper-growth do not come to mind when I think about property management.
That's a clip from a podcast Ryan did where he spoke about his time at DoorDash and about building Darwin. Despite its rating of 2 out of 5 stars on the Better Business Bureau website and entire threads on Reddit warning people to stay away, Darwin raised $15 million in Series A funding from investors with ties to DoorDash, Uber, and Silicon Valley Bank. In startup parlance, Series A funding is like the next step after seed funding. It means you've proven your idea works, at least to investors. Clearly the renters aren't too convinced. Now, does Darwin have anything to do with SFR3 and American Avenue? Are they 3 companies in a trench coat? It's a fair question, by the way, because it isn't obvious to a lot of the renters. The short answer is no. They may have had some relationship with SFR3 in the past, like they may have been the property manager of some of SFR3's homes, but as of November 2023, that is clearly no longer the case. American Avenue, on the other hand, is the current and only property management company overseeing most SFR3 homes. So those two are related. As for SFR3 itself, it was founded by 2 Harvard grads, Tom Fallows and Jonathan Kibera. Both had ties to Uber and Google. And the two actually go way back, starting together during the .com boom with a site called Rowers World. Like Darwin, SFR3's early funding came from tech money. I'm not rattling off resumes for trivia's sake here. I'm mentioning all of this to underscore their shared DNA. These are tech people, Silicon Valley people, People who have spent their careers thus far thinking in scale, data, and efficiency. And now they're trying to bring that playbook to one of the messiest, most physical and human-centered systems we have.
Knew nothing about property management at the time, and that was a blessing. If we would have known anything about property management, I mean, we would go talk to property management. Oh, you guys are nuts. Why would you want to do this? Never going to work.
By no means am I knocking ambition. There's a lot broken in housing, and the urge to fix it is totally fair. But the assumptions they carry with them into this space matter. And those assumptions may give us insight into why the tenant experience seems to be breaking down in very predictable ways. And that's at least one of the questions I'm interested in answering.
And so we're going to increase engagement and participation where you're going to be sitting in Fort Worth buying homes in Indianapolis. And you're never going to go to Indianapolis. And they're just going to exist on some portfolio.
But you know what? I'm getting ahead of myself here. We got a good idea of Darwin's website and its promises earlier, and it would only be appropriate to do the same with SFR3.
Our mission is simple: affordable homes for America.
All right, right below that.
Starter homes, a thing of the past.
Well, that's a curious pairing. Aren't starter homes supposed to be the affordable ones?
While other investors target more expensive finished homes, we find dilapidated houses in severe disrepair that haven't been maintained in decades. Banks won't finance this inventory.
Banks won't finance this inventory. Let's keep that in mind. They continue on to say that they use local labor and materials, reinvest in existing infrastructure like sewers, driveways, plumbing, rather than build new roads or subdivisions. According to their pitch, the result is a revitalized neighborhood filled with rentals managed by people who live nearby. And look, at first glance, none of that sounds bad. In fact, restoring older homes and making use of existing infrastructure is exactly the type of development I've always thought made sense. So how did it go so wrong? How do you get from this mission statement to tenants like Jasmine Murphy and Charles Wilson, people living without hot water, broken appliances, and mold? How do you get to 700 people trying to file a class action lawsuit?
You can automate a whole lot of things in this world. You can automate all the paperwork for the rental process. Great. But you can't automate repair and maintenance on a physical asset. I'm sorry, the world's going to always need plumbers and electricians and roofers and everything else. And there's no way to automate that. When it comes to fixing an asset, it turns out that you have to actually physically fix something.
That's Kyle Winning. He's been in the multifamily and affordable housing space for a very long time. And when I reached out to him about these companies, he just saw red flag after red flag. Our conversation focused on SFR3 because their website gave us clues as to why the homes kept falling apart in this systematic way. The first thing Kyle pointed out to me is that in buying dilapidated houses in severe disrepair, SFR3 is buying properties that demand a lot more investment and attention from day one.
But if you don't budget large dollars up front and large ongoing dollars to address that, you're going to have the consistent repair and maintenance problems that they appear to have.
SFR3 makes a big deal about the fact that they buy distressed homes.
By definition, our homes require very deep renovation, which would be uneconomical at retail pricing. We take the worst homes off the block, reducing neighborhood blight. A few months later, we have an improved, affordable rental that a hardworking family can be proud to call home.
The second thing he pointed out is the geography. These homes aren't clustered in a single neighborhood or city. They're scattered all over the country: Pennsylvania, Missouri, Ohio, Georgia, Michigan. That adds even more logistical complexity when it comes to maintaining them. But here is where the Silicon Valley approach really breaks down. The vendors. The people who are supposed to make your home move-in ready. The people who are supposed to show up when something breaks down. The vendors are subcontracted and have no personal relationship to the homes in need of their service, nor the company contracting them. It's just a gig. Your toilet breaks. You report it through the app, which routes to a vendor marketplace, which finds a contractor who's maybe never seen your house before. That contractor shows up, maybe, does the work, maybe, gets paid, maybe, but the minute there's any dispute, payment issues, quality problems, scheduling conflicts, you're stuck in limbo while the app tries to find another vendor.
I have never seen a website that is so focused on finding vendors. And I mean that in all sincerity. I mean, the vendor link is above the rental link on their homepage.
He has a point. It's like Uber for plumbing, except when your ride doesn't show up, you're not late for work. You're living without running water for weeks. Nevertheless, for Kyle, that still wasn't the whole story.
There are two headlines here. One is it's not if, but when they fail, because this is going to blow up. And two, that this is, I would argue, typical Silicon Valley hubris. I don't think this is particularly complicated. I don't think this is intentional fraud. I don't think there's any of that going on. I do think there's a tremendous amount of arrogance and ignorance.
I want to focus on number 2, hubris. Almost everyone I talked to said some version of the same thing, that these Silicon Valley disruptors came into housing thinking they could treat it like any other logistics problem. Take the same mindset used to deliver tacos or toilet paper and apply it to managing shelter. Here's how Chuck Marone, the founder of Strong Towns, put it.
Again, not something you can do from an app, not something you can do from 1,000 miles away. You know how when you read the newspaper and you read an article about something you don't know anything about, and you're like, wow, that's really interesting. And then you read an article about something that you're an expert at, and you're like, oh my gosh, they're missing so much of the nuance, so much of the insight. Like, this is actually kind of wrong. I feel like what you have here is you just have an attribution error. Like, I understand this domain. I have no clue about this domain, but I'm going to assume that I know things just because I'm smart and, you know, people are willing to give me lots of money.
This is what I meant when I said it matters what assumptions you bring into a space. The housing ecosystem we've patched together over the last few decades has been top of mind for Chuck, so much so that he and Daniel Herridges co-wrote a whole book about it called Escaping the Housing Trap. He agrees with Kyle that there's no clean way to compress housing into an app.
You've got some like deep complication that can't be handled from 800 miles away in an app. It's something that requires you to be on the ground, analyze it, figure it out, go door to door, talk to this person in this permitting office, this person in this attorney's office, work things out.
So to reiterate the core problem here, SFR3's model depends on buying distressed homes that need a lot of money and TLC upfront. This is a tall order for even the seasoned developer who knows all the codes, the contractors, and can predict all the obstacles. But try doing that across 10,000 homes with a decentralized patchwork of vendors and zero prior experience in the housing space. This is a strategy built for scale, but not stewardship. Things are bound to slip through the cracks. Again, it's like if you're delivered the wrong Instacart or DoorDash order, or you're given the runaround when submitting a complaint to Uber, it's a nuisance and it can totally derail your day. But the stakes are so much higher when it comes to shelter. You're dealing with, you've already heard what people are dealing with.
I don't think they really understood how much it would take to maintain these homes. And I think they'd learned the hard way.
That's Kyle again. I asked him and everyone I interviewed, frankly, but how are companies like SFR3 or Darwin any different from your typical slumlord? Because the outcomes, tenants living with mold, broken plumbing, collapsed ceilings, and so on, these aren't new. Predatory landlords have been around for generations.
I don't think that this is an entity that set out to become a slumlord, but I got to tell you, they are absolutely on that path. And once you're on that path, short of a major capital infusion, I don't know what you do.
Or, as Chuck put it,
I think there is a narrative here where we start out with good intentions. We go out in the marketplace and find that the newer single-family home in the leafy cul-de-sac that was available in 2010, 2011 is no longer available. But what is available is the highly distressed home in the highly distressed area that needs a lot of work. And we start buying up those and acquiring those because we have a lot of money and we promised investors we would do this. And then those homes become a lot harder to service, a lot more difficult to take care of. because I think a lot of them would not like to be slumlords. Like that's not the business they got into, but it's the business that this entity kind of slid into becoming. The fact that there are so many other ones that we see now cropping up, so many places, tells me that there's something about this model that makes it uniquely profitable or that makes it uniquely enticing to Silicon Valley money, to VC money. There's no good, easy way to unload those without kind of cascading your whole portfolio. And so you wind up, whether you want to or not, in the slumlord business. What it appears from the outside is that we don't have the money or the capacity or the on-the-ground ability to actually rehab these places the way we wanted. But we also can't exit them at the prices that we need to make this work. And so we're kind of stuck getting as much rent as we can out of people in really substandard housing.
In other words, the answer I kept getting was this. It's not the results, it's the design. These companies are structured in a way that reliably produces slumlord conditions, whether they intend it or not. You know that idea that given enough time, everything evolves into a crab? It feels a little bit like that, like the final evolutionary form of trying to optimize housing the Silicon Valley way turns out to look a lot like a slumlord.
You see that by kind of force of we can't lose money or we can't abandon this model or we have to keep going down this route, you see it becoming increasingly predatory. And I think that's a standard way that these models evolve because you're more sensitive to the bank that you owe money to than the tenants that you have 1,000 miles away. You're more sensitive to the venture capitalist that you want to fund your next initiative that you promised a return on. You're more sensitive to that than you are to the struggles of the widow who is struggling to make rent in Columbus, Georgia. You're more sensitive to the efficiencies than you are to the messiness.
If this model is doomed to produce the same outcomes, at least for tenants, I'm left asking, what kind of system rewards that? Since their foundings, SFR3 and Darwin have scaled. SFR3 owns more than 10,000 single-family homes in over 20 metro areas. Here's how they put it.
SFR3 is a tech-driven real estate investment fund, acquiring and renovating $2 billion plus of single-family homes across dozens of smaller U.S. metros. We've grown to over 10,000 homes in just a few years, and continuing to scale. At the core of that growth is consistent, high-quality turn and maintenance work delivered on time and on budget. That's where you come in.
To break it down, this is 1,000 homes in Ohio, South Carolina, and Georgia, nearly 800 in Missouri, about 600 in Indiana. Some of the complaints I read date back years, and yet in that time, SFR3's portfolio doubled. In 2019, they acquired 700 properties, then almost 1,000 in 2020. They added another 2,800 properties to their portfolio in 2021, and by 2022, another 3,000 on top of that. They've attracted investors in this time, and all of this could be said for Darwin. In fact, the same could be said for the many copycats I've run across in my research. Remember, this isn't about any single company, although looking into their specifics will help us flesh out this story. This is a model, and it's clearly one that's profitable. I spoke to a number of people in preparation for this episode, and in their own words, they all suggested the following idea. When a model like this grows, gets funded, and scales, even as it fails tenants, even as vendors complain and lawsuits pile up, it's sending a clear signal. This isn't a glitch or a loophole. This is the system working exactly as designed. And that's where we're headed in episode 2. Specifically back to the policies and promises of the post-2008 recovery. Back to when millions of homes entered foreclosure practically overnight, and a new type of buyer stepped in to fill them.